Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I am going over my Draftkings and Fanduel final look picks for Sunday. We have a 12-game slate. Lots of injury news, especially the wide receiver position. We'll touch on the main ones as we go through the positions. Let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for all the support you guys have been showing on the videos. If you guys enjoy them, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe. It really helps me out. You can check out Twitter to stay more connected because I'm sure we'll get some more news. Probably tomorrow, even Sunday before inactives are announced. But starting off with the quarterback position, and if you wanted to join us for this week, you can visit the website dfsprocess.net. Link is down below in the description. Let's have a really good week. It was a fine week, average week, week one. Had some winning lineups, some losing lineups this week. See if we can kind of get everything to come together and have like a big week across the slates and across the sites. At the quarterback plays, first off, just looking at the Vegas totals for Sunday, there's the Raiders currently have the highest implied total for the Sunday games. They're at 28.5. They have a quarter higher than the Rams. But in terms of teams that you're kind of focusing on, in terms of stacking your wide receivers, you're getting your running backs from, even your quarterback potentially, is going to be from the Raiders, the Rams, the Broncos. They all have great matchups. They all should put up north of hopefully 25 points and get you probably hopefully 4 touchdowns at least. Even the 49ers have a pretty high total. They're at 25 against the Seahawks. The Bengals are below that at 24.5. And then your lower 20s you have is the Ravens at 24. The Colts got some question marks with them. But at the quarterback position, we have Kyler Murray against the Las Vegas Raiders. This should be one of the better games to stack just because the Cardinals are very depleted with some injury fronts, especially at the wide receiver position. Andy Isabella has now joined the group of guys that are banged up, along with Rondell Moore, and obviously Hopkins is still suspended. So their receiver in core is going to be made up of Marquise Brown, the number one weapon, and second guy is going to be probably Greg Dortch after his great week one performance, and then followed by AJ Green. And then, the tight end is going to mix it, and the Connor's going to get his work as well. So it's pretty easy to stack them. And on the other side, the Raiders are at home. Devontae Adams is playing in front of his family. Said his grandparents are going to be there. First time they're seeing him play. So he's going to pop off. You can definitely expect that to happen. So it's just a pretty easy stack. You can definitely Kyler Murray, one of the better quarterbacks on this slate. Now that, in terms of fantasy, just without having Herbert and Mahomes, and you have a couple of Monday night games, which takes out Hurts as well. So in terms of the running quarterbacks, I think Murray, I like him a lot, especially a little bit better than Lamar, just given the matchup. And then we have Russell Wilson. He's 72 on DraftKings, still pretty affordable on FanDuel. So if you're going to play Wilson, play him on FanDuel. But I probably like Murray a little bit more, but he's just one of the other top-end quarterbacks that I do have some interest in just because it's easy to stack them as well. Mid-range, we have Matthew Stafford against the Falcons. This should be one of the better. Also, this side should be great to stack as well. If you don't want to, probably don't want to go crazy with the Atlanta side, but definitely the Rams after losing week one the way that they did, expecting a bounce back, pile up some points against the Falcons defense, even though Falcons did look good getting to the quarterback last week in Jameis Winston, but could be because the Saints offensive line is just that bad and that inexperienced at some positions. Then we have Derek Carr. If you're stacking that game, you can play some lineups with Derek Carr. If you're playing him, pair him with his best weapon, and he almost got 50% of his targets. Devontae Adams did. Those two are easy to stack up. And then value plays this week. I guess Carson Wentz is in the mix as well, going up against Detroit, who their defense is probably up and coming, but they're still going to get burned by wide receivers. And Carson Wentz actually has some pretty good receiving core. Curtis Samuel had over 10 targets, and he's had some good years back with Carolina. McLaurin's a beast, and then the rookie first-round pick, Jahan Dotson, had 2 grabs in week one, and he looked 2 touchdown grabs in week one, and he looked really good. So against that defense, he should, if Wentz plays not as good as he did in week one, because we haven't seen that from Wentz for a couple years, but if he plays like 80% of that, he should still have a good fantasy game. And then Trey Lance against Seattle, they have a high total. It was just not a good game for football in terms of fantasy last week for both sides, but we saw the Bears get some big touchdown receptions from a couple of their wide receivers. But for Lance, he couldn't really get anything going. He potentially might have Kittle back, which will help. But really, he didn't have also that many opportunities to go out and just run against that Bears defense. He tried to at times. But he had like 13 rushes, I think like 78 yards or something like that. But there just wasn't. He was just kind of doing that when things broke down. He wasn't getting that much opportunities to look for his receivers. And, had an interception, no touchdowns for him. Running back plays, there's a lot of them, especially in the mid-range, I'd say. You got a couple at the top end, like McCaffrey. I still probably take the savings on McCaffrey, then go all the way up to Jonathan Taylor, who's almost touching 10K. But I don't think I might even get to McCaffrey because I love the mid-range at running back this week on both sides. But Saquon Barkley against Carolina, if you wanted to get to him, I'm sure fantasy owners are very, very happy that drafted Barkley this year, at least until, well, hopefully he stays healthy all season. It's been great watching him play the games that he has been healthy. Just has so much talent, and if he has even if he plays even as close as he did last week, then Carolina might be in trouble. And then Joe Mixon against Dallas. He had a good fantasy game like usual. He's a 3-down running back. He's going to get receptions. He's going to get a lot of carries. He almost had an opportunity to get into the end zone, but got out at like the 1 yard line or 2 yard line. But Dallas is really not going to put up much of a fight, I'd say. Playing without Dak Prescott for a couple games. Bengals coming off of losing a crazy game against the Steelers. They'll probably bounce back and get the win. Mid-range looks really strong with Javonte Williams and Antonio Gibson, especially on DraftKings. Like Williams, I think that they're going to start to use him more inside the 5. Did have that fumble at the 1 yard line. Also, the backup running back, Melvin Gordon, did as well. But Javonte Williams looked amazing. Went out of the backfield, catching reception and just breaking tackles, doing what he does. And out in open space, he is very difficult to tackle. So he had 11 targets, and I think that's going to really help him. And then Gibson against Detroit without Brian Robinson, who looks like he's getting back to himself, and there was a video of him working out. He looks good, but he's still out for a couple games, and Gibson's backfield is going to be all to himself with McKissick mixing in a few, mostly on third down situations. But Gibson also showed that he can catch passes, and Wentz will dump it off to him as well, and definitely can make things happen. He had a great fantasy game in week 1, and the matchup is also very appealing against a Detroit team that gave up 4 rushing touchdowns to the Eagles, and Gibson did all that without even finding the end zone. And then value play will be Darrell Henderson, just because Akers looks like he's in the doghouse. He only got 3 touches in week 1. Unless he starts to show something, McVay's probably going to keep going to Henderson, and he gets a matchup against the Falcons. Should be a high-scoring game. He can also catch passes out of the backfield. So for his price tag on both sides, he's in the 5Ks on DraftKings, $6,200 on FanDuel, with the touchdown upside that he can give you, especially if they're not using Akers. The goal line carries are going to go to him. He's fine at his price tag. Wide receiver plays. It is a very deep wide receiver slate this week on DraftKings. You got a couple top-end plays like Devontae Adams, who now I really love because it's very easy to get to him with the value that's opened up in Arizona, and possibly more value that's going to open up in Indianapolis, as well as possibly with Tampa Bay. But Adams, especially now that we learned that his grandparents are going to be there and playing in front of his family, I'm sure he's going to ball out against the Cardinals defense that got shredded last week by Mahomes. And then Jamar Chase against Dallas. If you want to be contrarian, I don't think too many people will go to him, just because there's Adams is up there, Cooper Kupp is up there, but he had a huge game, and it came in a losing fashion, but he had 16 targets, and once they started to fall behind, they just kept throwing it to Chase, and could have even had another touchdown in that game. The mid-range, you got a couple of questionable pieces in here with Michael Pittman Jr., who's questionable. I think he got hurt in practice or something, hurt his quad. He's currently listed as questionable. If he does happen to suit up with Alec Pierce not playing, he's already been ruled out, then he might even get more targets than usual. And the matchup is soft against the Jaguars. So if Pittman is able to play, I like him. The price tag is still pretty cheap. He's sub 7K on DraftKings and still pretty affordable. It's a little bit tougher on FanDuel to get to him, but still like the price tag with how involved he is in the offense. Mike Evans, we got word that Godwin's already been ruled out, as that was to be expected. Evans and Julio Jones, as well as Leonard Fournette, are questionable. If they all three happen to play, which hopefully happens, then I'll still like Evans without Godwin. He's going to be the guy in goal line situations, and Brady's going to look to get him the ball whenever he can. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown against the Washington, I almost said Washington football team, Washington Commanders. He also had a big game against the Eagles. The Lions did not quit in that game. They continued to throw, and we could see this game also be kind of a sneaky shootout between two teams that people weren't expecting much heading into this year, but after both teams showed some good stuff in week 1, at least offensively. So if Amon-Ra St. Brown can continue to get as many targets as usual, like 12 targets in week 1, he got a bunch of targets to close out last year, and that's where he made a name for himself. So he looks solid. Really not too much competition besides like Swift out of the backfield and Hawkinson there, at least until they get their Jameson Williams makes his debut. Value plays, Marquise Brown against the Raiders, just because there is not going to be too many guys to throw the ball to from wide receiver position. He's going to get a lot of targets. He was able to salvage his fantasy line with a touchdown in the second half last week, and he's going to be looked to heavily this week to contribute. He had 6 targets. Expect more than that. What should be a high-scoring, hopefully close game, just so we can get both sides throwing the whole entire game. Cortland Sutton against Houston. Jerry Jeudy had a monster bomb reception, 60-plus yarder. So people might be on him instead. I think it's a good opportunity to go to Sutton. Still like Jeudy, but Sutton's only 500 more, and this could be the week Sutton goes off, and I think those guys will take some turns. But I love the fact that they let Russ throw the ball a ton. He threw 340 yards, although lots of turnovers inside the 5 cost him in that game. And then Allen Robinson against Atlanta. The price tag is still very appealing on both sides. Although, like early in the week, it looked like he was going to be a very, very easy play to get to. But now that we that the weeks unfolded, we got some more value. We got like Marquise Brown for a few hundred more. We have like Sutton, who played really well, and Jeudy is like similarly priced, and like Julio Jones could be involved heavily if without Godwin, and potentially if Fournette or Evans isn't able to suit up. So I still like Allen Robinson, but he's not as high. I'm not as high on him as I was in the first look. And then besides Julio Jones for more values, you have Jahan Dotson against the Lions. He looked great, especially if he's going to continue to get a lot of red zone opportunities, and you definitely fire him up. He's super cheap across the sites once again. And then probably the best value play of the slate is going to be Greg Dortch. Price tag didn't move on Draftkings, still $3,400. And on FanDuel as well, he's still only $5,500. And he played a lot better than AJ Green. He's going to definitely overtake him until they get like more back and Hopkins comes back. But 9 targets for 63 yards, 7 grabs. Price tag is super cheap. So even getting like 5 catches will be awesome value against the Raiders. Tight end plays. Mark Andrews against the Dolphins is still the top end play this week, just because there's no Travis Kelce. And Andrews had a fine week in week 1. I mean, not pretty disappointing given his price tag, but 5 catches, 52 yards. He did a lot better than a lot of tight ends. And this week, 2 touchdowns went to Duvernay. Mark Andrews still makes his name inside the red zone. And then Darren Waller, especially still with Kittle being a big question mark, he's the second guy I still prefer getting to Andrews. Mid-range is pretty strong on tight ends, just with some injuries. Zach Ertz going to be involved heavily. He had a garbage time touchdown last week. Only 4 targets, 14 yards, but expect him to be a lot more involved. Like Tyler Higbee with no Van Jefferson. He had 11 targets in week 1, and Van Jefferson's already been ruled out again this week. So we know Higbee can also, if he gets like 8 to 10 targets, that'll be awesome for his price tag. He had 11 week 1, and it should be a high-scoring game. If he's able to get into the end zone, that'll be awesome. And now value plays, you got Big Albert O, who played very well for them. He had 5 grabs, 33 yards. He was involved running a lot of routes. That's good to see. And the matchup is really good against Texans. Their defense is not up to par yet. Still a couple years away. And after losing in week 1, expect Russ and company to put up some points. And then Evan Ingram, just to get to like a sleeper, he could be one. We saw like Zay Jones have a big game and Chris Kirk have a big game in week 1. Lawrence was looking at those guys a lot. But Ingram's had 4 grabs, 4 targets. He's still running a lot of routes and being on the field a bunch, and he's still the top tight end. So against the Colts, if you wanted to play a guy that won't be too popular, you can look to Evan Ingram. Defense plays, we don't really have to touch on the value plays because Bengals defense is going to be a lock in cash games on DraftKings. Even on FanDuel, they're still one of the best defense, I'd say, based on price tag. Mid-range Steelers against Mac Jones, who's dealing with like a stomach bug, but he should be good to go. But still, if he's not 100%, that'll help them. And their defense is nasty, just with all the guys that they have back there, ball hawks and guys that will punch the ball out and cause turnovers and fumbles. And we saw the Dolphins defense tee off against the Patriots, and that could happen again this week with the Steelers. We got the Bucks against the Saints. If the Saints had trouble stopping the Falcons' defensive line, they're going to have a lot of trouble stopping this Tampa Bay Bucks defensive line. So they're definitely in play in the mid-range. And then top end plays the Browns against the Jets, just because the Jets are the Jets and the Browns have some good playmakers on the defensive end. Not worried about Joe Flacco and company. And then the Colts, if you wanted to play another top end defense, but really the Steelers, Bengals, two defense I really like, and Bucks, throw them in there. I don't like to spend too much on defenses if I don't have to. And that's it. So that's it for the video. Let me know what you guys think. There's still got lots of question marks, especially at the wide receiver position, but keep you guys updated on Twitter and stuff for once we get those news. But thank you for watching. Best of luck this week. I'll have a prize picks video out probably tomorrow, but 3 of 4 on the Thursday nighter. Travis Kelce fell short. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.